Elias had always believed he understood himself. He thought he knew why he acted the way he did, why certain people intimidated him, why he apologized for everything, and why he felt small even when nothing bad was happening. He assumed it was simply who he was, a quiet young man living in a quiet village, avoiding trouble and staying out of the way. But what he never realized was that most of his actions were not choices. They were reactions, automatic responses, the kind that come from a part of a person they don't even know exists. And one day, he would come face to face with that hidden part, in a way that changed his life forever. It began on an evening that looked like any other. The sun had just disappeared behind the mountains, leaving the sky painted in orange and violet. Elias walked along the riverside, a place he often visited when he felt anxious. Something about the water made him feel less crowded in his own thoughts. That day, however, the familiar calm never came. Instead, he felt as if someone was watching him, not with malice, but with a silent familiarity that he couldn't explain. He stopped walking and looked over his shoulder. No one. Only trees, the path, the river, and the distant sound of barking dogs in the village. But the sensation didn't go away. It grew stronger, almost like a presence walking just a few steps behind him. Elias took a deeper breath and resumed walking, pretending he didn't feel it. Yet every time he slowed down, the feeling slowed with him. When he moved faster, it followed. He finally turned around again, and this time he saw it. It stood under a tree, just far enough to be mistaken for darkness, but close enough to be undeniably real. A tall figure, black like a shadow, but shaped like a person. No eyes, no mouth, no features at all. Still, Elias felt that it was looking directly at him. His heart pounded in his chest, and a cold wave crawled down his spine. But the figure didn't move, didn't threaten him, didn't step forward. It simply existed, silently acknowledging its presence. Elias wanted to run, but something deeper than fear held him still, a strange familiarity, as if he had seen this figure not once, but many times before. Maybe not with his eyes, but somewhere inside him. He gathered what little courage he had and whispered, barely audible, "Who are you?" The figure tilted its head, and the movement was surprisingly gentle, almost human. Then, a voice filled the air. It did not come from its mouth, for it had none. It came from everywhere, as if the trees, the wind, and the river spoke at once. "I am the part of you that you have never dared to meet." Elias froze. The part of him, he stared harder, unsure if he was dreaming or losing his mind. "What does that mean?" he asked. The figure stepped forward, and though Elias flinched, the figure's presence didn't feel hostile. It felt heavy, like carrying a truth you never wanted to face. "You spend your life pretending you are in control," the voice said. "But it is I who guides your fears, your reactions, your silence, and your pain." Elias shook his head. "No, that makes no sense. I control myself. My choices are mine." The figure took another slow step toward him. "Are they? When someone raises their voice at you, why can't you respond? When someone treats you unfairly, why do you apologize? When you feel anger rising, why do you swallow it until it becomes poison inside you? When you want to say no, why does yes escape your lips instead?" Each question was a knife. Elias felt exposed, as if the figure could see every memory he had tried to bury. He wanted to deny it, to argue, to push the truth away. But deep inside, he knew the figure was right. These were habits he never chose consciously, they were automatic. He lowered his gaze and whispered, "Why do I do that? Why am I like this?" The shadow's voice softened. "Because you have never looked at the part of you that learned fear. The part that learned to please others to survive. The part that believed silence kept you safe. The part that carried your earliest wounds and hid them from you so you wouldn't break. I am that part. I am everything you abandoned." Elias felt tears gather behind his eyes. He didn't know this kind of pain existed, the pain of meeting yourself. Not the version you present to the world, but the version that formed when you were too young to understand life. The version shaped by fear, rejection, shame, and unmet needs. He asked, "Why now? Why are you appearing now?" The shadow replied, "Because you are old enough to choose. Old enough to stop running. Old enough to know that whatever you refuse to face controls you." The sentence hit him with a force he couldn't describe. Suddenly, memories Elias thought were gone resurfaced. The day he hid under his bed while his parents yelled in the next room. The moment a teacher mocked him in front of everyone. The first time someone laughed at his dreams. The disappointment of being ignored. The loneliness of pretending everything was fine. All the things he never processed, never understood. All the things he forced himself to forget. The shadow spoke again. "I am not here to hurt you. I exist because you needed me once. You needed protection. So I became fear. You needed acceptance. So I became pleasing. You needed safety. So I became silence. But you are not that small child anymore. You no longer need me to survive, but I remained. I guided you, because you never looked back to take the reins." Elias wiped his face. "Then why do I still feel controlled by you?" The shadow stepped closer until it stood only a few feet away. "Because you don't know me, and what you don't know, you fear. And what you fear, you obey." Elias felt something shift inside him, a realization forming. He asked, "So, what happens if I get to know you?" The shadow's voice lowered. "Then I become a guide, not a master. A part of you, not the ruler of you. A memory, not a prison." Elias took a trembling breath. "Show me." The figure extended an arm, and when Elias took a step forward, scenes from his past surrounded them, not like a dream, but as if the memories had become the air itself. He saw his younger self looking small, scared, confused, alone. He watched moments he had run from. Times he was hurt, moments when he hid his voice. Places where he stopped believing he mattered. Every memory felt heavier than the last. Elias wanted to look away, but the shadow said, "You must see, because every one of these moments still lives in you. They shaped your habits, they shaped your fear, they shaped your relationship with yourself." Elias watched his younger self sit alone in the dark, trying not to cry because crying made the adults angry. He watched the moment a friend betrayed his trust. He watched teachers and relatives say things that cut deeper than they realized. And finally, he watched himself promise, without speaking, that he would never cause trouble again, never be loud, never disagree, never ask for too much. He watched the moment he chose to disappear. The shadow spoke again. "You learn to survive by shrinking. But survival is not living." A long silence followed, until Elias finally whispered, "I don't want to live like this anymore." The shadow stepped back. "Then listen carefully. I was created by pain, but I am not pain itself. I hold the emotions you never expressed, the memories you never processed, the truths you never accepted. If you walk with me, not away from me, we can become whole." Elias hesitated. "How do I walk with you?" "Begin by telling the truth," the shadow said. "Not to others, to yourself. Admit what hurt you. Admit what scared you. Admit what shaped you. Then, slowly, gently, begin rewriting the story you tell yourself." Elias nodded slowly. He didn't understand everything, but he understood enough. Enough to know that for the first time in his life, he was not running, not hiding, not avoiding. He was facing the part of him that held all the weight he had carried. The shadow began to fade slightly, not disappearing, but softening. Elias asked, "Are you leaving?" "No," the voice answered. "I will always be part of you. But I do not need to control you anymore. When you know me, you lead. When you ignore me, I lead." Elias took a step closer and said quietly, "I want to lead." The shadow's form dissolved further, becoming thin, like smoke touched by sunlight. "Then promise yourself one thing. You will no longer run from discomfort. You will face what you feel. You will allow yourself to be human. You will not betray yourself to be accepted. And you will remember that the strongest voice in your life must be your own." Elias nodded. "I promise." As the last traces of the shadow dissolved into the wind, Elias felt something he hadn't felt since he was a child. Not happiness, not excitement, something quieter, something deeper. He felt presence, he felt himself. Not the version trained to please or avoid conflict, not the version shaped by fear, but the version he could become now that he understood where his reactions came from. He looked at the river, the trees, the path, all the same as before, but somehow different. Or perhaps he was the one who was different. He put a hand on his chest and whispered, "I finally found who was controlling my life. And it was me all along, just the part I never wanted to meet." He took a deep breath and began walking back to the village. Not the same way he came, not with the same weight on his shoulders. He walked as someone who had seen his own truth. Someone who understood that meeting your shadow is not the end of your journey. It is the beginning, the first step toward a life led by awareness, not fear. By choice, not reaction. By understanding, not avoidance. From that day forward, Elias still felt his shadow at times, not as a threat, but as a quiet companion, a reminder of who he had been and who he could become. And whenever fear or doubt tried to control him, he would place a hand on his heart and say, "I see you, and I choose differently," and for the first time in his life, he truly could.